Good morning, good morning, good morning. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Oscar Parham, and I have the privilege to oversee the New Jersey Redevelopment Authority's Training Institute. At the NJRA, our mission is to improve the quality of the lives in our community. And one of the ways that we're always excited to do this is via our webinar and educational platforms. Um, our focus is, in addition to providing education, also providing resources and relevant information about real estate and redevelopment as well as small business. So thank you again for joining us. Today's webinar titled Minority Developers, Investment, Equity, and Access to Opportunities in New Jersey will be broken into two sessions today. The first session will be co-moderated by Mr. Daryl Godfrey, our own Chief Operations Officer, and Mr. Peter Woolfolk from the African American Chamber of Commerce, who's also Chief Operations Officer there. They will be leading a very engaging panel discussion with our expert developers to talk about some of the challenges, some of their strategies that they face, and some of their best practices to how they navigate as minority developers throughout various communities. Our second session, we're going to continue with presentations from our industry experts who will, in addition to talk about some of the insights they see, they will also be talking about specific funding opportunities for our developers. So thank you again. I'll let Mr. Daryl Godfrey, Mr. Peter Woolfolk introduce themselves, and we will kick off our panel discussion. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm glad to see we have such a robust attendance. I am Daryl Godfrey, the Chief Operations Officer for the New Jersey Redevelopment Authority. Carrying two hats today, I'm also the interim president and CEO, as our president, Ms. Leslie A. Anderson, takes some time off. She'll be back shortly, so we'll be happy to welcome her back shortly. But more importantly, thanks everyone for coming here today. We at the NJRA are blessed that, led by our Oscar Parham, to create this opportunity to just have a kind of like a fireside chat on some of the opportunities, the barriers, and what exists out there that face the minority and contractors community. So on that, I'll just switch it over to Mr. Philip D. Woolfolk from the African American Chamber of Commerce.
Thanks a lot, Daryl, and welcome everyone. I'm Phil Woolfolk, Chief Operations Officer for the African American Chamber of Commerce of New Jersey. Happy to be here with our partners at the New Jersey Redevelopment Authority. Daryl and I have had a lot of conversations recently about how we build some synergy across the state to really change the game as it relates to how the small developers and African American developers around the state receive the resources needed to really be impactful, a lot more impactful as it relates to development. So with that, I guess we can get started, Daryl.
Okay, so what I would like to do is we have a tremendous panel here today, and these are practitioners. For me, they're like my friends in the sense, because we talk about these issues concerning this access to capital, other barriers that are there that hurts us from getting opportunities done. So, as Phil said, I would just like to talk to, right now, we can pull up our guest, Oscar. And I will start with just introducing someone who I know, every time I see her, she's just a boil of just confidence. And that's Nicole Lockett. Nicole, if you can just give a brief outline on what you do, all the great work. It could probably take 2 hours, but give us like the 2 minutes still.
Thank you so much, Daryl. It is wonderful to be here. I think I might be doing a little bit of feedback. So I want to make sure that folks can hear me. Great. Great. I am Nicole. I am the managing director. Still great. I'm wondering if Yeah, I think it may be a mute issue. Perfect. Thank you again. This is actually one of my favorite subjects, so I'm really excited to be here. And NJRA has been such a great supporter of our company, Genesis Companies, since our inception in 2004. Again, I'm Nicole Lockett. I am the Managing Director of Development at Genesis Companies. We are a New York-based developer, mainly of affordable housing, but generally with some mixed income and mixed use components to that. Our core business is affordable housing, and that is a good bit of our heart. We are, however, though based in New York, working a lot in New Jersey. And in New Jersey, as an African-American developer, I think that we are one of the most prolific users of low-income housing tax credits, actually, in the state. We have recently expanded our footprint into Massachusetts. And in fact, just yesterday, along with the Peebles Corporation, we were selected for a Massachusetts DOT, Department of Transportation parcel that will house 300,000 square feet of lab space, another 218 units of housing. 40% of that will be affordable. So we are able to expand our footprint because of folks like NJRA who supported us in the very beginning. So again, we're very happy to be here. I'm very happy to be here on behalf of Genesis Companies. And Daryl, you're on mute.
Thanks, Nicole. Saved me again. But thank you for your kind words. The next one, I've known this entrepreneur, great, woman leader, Maria Iglesias. She's just a wealth of fresh air. I mean, just doing really good things throughout the urban communities. And I know in New Jersey, she's probably expanded other places now. So, Maria, could you give us a 1-minute spiel of your great things that you're doing? Maria, we can't hear you.
Can you hear me?
Now we can, Maria. Thank you.
Okay, wonderful. I am really thrilled to participate in this panel. And I am Maria Iglesias, and I am one of the members of M&M Development. M&M started in 1997 in Newark, New Jersey. And we have been building affordable housing in urban communities ever since. Most of our work has taken place in the city of Newark and in the city of Camden. I have been working with New Jersey Redevelopment Agency for a long time, and we don't have Rolodexes anymore, but it is in the top of my list of people that we can count on.
Thank you, Maria.
I'm very happy to be here.
Thank you. Welcome. Appreciate you. And then I'm going to go to Mr. Christopher Garland.
Thank you, Daryl. First, let me just say that I want to thank Daryl and the entire NJRA team for sponsoring and hosting today's event. I've been in this business for 30 years, and I've got to say there's been more activity and discussion around this issue in the last 2 years than in the prior 28. And I think it's a testament to the people and my colleagues on this panel that we have been successful, and we have made some very important inroads in this space, but yet there's still a lot more work to be done. Just real briefly, my background, like I said, I've been in this business for 30 years. I started out as a development lender with the Community Preservation Corporation in New York City. There's an echo, I think.
I think Maria, I think the echo comes from you, Maria.
If you can
There you
mute.
go.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. And, at CPC, I financed roughly 1,500 units of housing. And ironically enough, at the time, started a small building lending program, which was geared specifically for minority developers. And, as we get further in this discussion, we can talk about public-private partnerships and how that can be utilized to stimulate activity in this space. After that, I came over to New Jersey and was the founding director of the Domus Corporation and developed a lot of affordable housing, senior housing, special needs housing, family housing. And for the past, 15 years, I've been managing director of the RCG Development Group. We're based in Montclair, New Jersey, and very active in Jersey City. Our last project was a signature project, was a LIHTC historic tax credit project on Montgomery Street in Jersey City. One of the few minority developers actually to get tax credits, and we can talk about that, and HMFA and their role in this as well. And again, just very, very happy to be here, and look forward to a robust dialogue. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Patrick, how are you today, Patrick?
I'm good, thank you. It's really good to be here.
Thank you. You give
So,
us go ahead, Patrick. I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry.
No, just say give us just a 2-minute introduction of who you are.
Sure. Good morning. Really thankful to NJREF to be here. It's always great to collaborate with the agency. And I think everybody knows the important role that you've played in being first quite often in many of these projects around the state. My name is Patrick Terberg. I'm the managing member of TD Plus Partners. And our development lens or space has spanned about 10 to 12 years now. And we've done a mix of large-scale market rate housing, affordable housing, industrial buildings, community assets like childcare centers, and we're currently working on a subsidized mixed income project in East Orange, New Jersey, where we're doing about 172 units, and 70% of the units are market rate, 30% are affordable. And we're going to be building a new school in Plainfield, New Jersey, for children with acute disabilities, and that should be breaking ground in June, July this year. And then we have a couple of market rate projects planned in Plainfield that are going to start this year as well. I do believe that it's important to have a mix of affordable housing and market rate housing as we develop, and I think we should definitely be sensitive to the affordable housing space, because as we develop these communities, we have to have an understanding that the people who have been there for a very long time, that have lived in substandard housing, do in fact need high quality housing. And we should also recognize that these communities are not simply one specific median income, as they're not topping out, let's say, at 60% of AMI. You look at a place like Plainfield, and it's a AMI spectrum that spans 30% to probably 250% of AMI. So what we need primarily in our communities are great resources, a mix of different services and businesses, et cetera. So that's what I'm interested in going forward.
Thanks, Patrick. Greg, I've heard so much about you. This is my first time even seeing you, to be quite frank. But
hiding in my basement.
But one of the things that they say in lending, you had the 5 C's of credit, and they say character. I guess they have your face there because you have the most greatest character. That's right here. So now it's time for you to shine, Greg, and tell us what you do.
Good morning, everybody. It's great to hear all of the stories from the other panelists. It's really exciting, the work that you're doing. I'm Greg Reeves. I'm the CEO of Mosaic Development Partners. We're based in Philadelphia. We do work primarily in the Philadelphia region, but we have expanded to Maryland and Ohio. We are focused on commercial development, but we're primarily focused on wealth building and wealth building strategies through the use of real estate assets, primarily for communities of color. And that's what our focus has been. We don't focus on a particular product type. We have done affordable housing. We've done 9% tax credits. We've done grocery stores and food deserts. We've done daycare centers. We've done mixed income communities. We just broke ground recently. I mentioned earlier to some of the team members on a very significant lab building that's in gene and cell therapy, in the gene and cell therapy space, just a few days ago. And we do a lot in the university space as well. So we're really excited to be a part of it, but our focus is really on how do we bring an ecosystem of wealth to communities that have been starved from those opportunities.
Well, thanks, Greg. I appreciate that. I'm just going to go around and just ask some general questions. But more importantly, I'm going to take a little snippet from my president and CEO, Leslie Anderson. When I give you these questions, take the gloves off. I mean, and what I mean by that is really just, the professionalism, the experience that we have here is tremendous, but we need to be truthful. And the only way we're going to set the agenda, how we can do things differently, we need to talk about those things. So I know that I don't have any people who sleep on the side here. I mean, I can just look at these individuals and I know they're geared up, ready to go. So Nicole, I'm gonna start with you and just give me some of the barriers and challenges that are out there that hurt people in the minority community of getting access.
I think we all sort of, as we were talking before, Daryl, mentioned this, it's access to capital, and it's particularly access to capitals in our businesses as opposed to our deals. There is a vast infrastructure of deal capital, right? So once you can get through the hundreds of thousands, sometimes millions of dollars it takes to get a deal to the place where someone will finance it, you're great. But it is investing in the business to get through all those things, to get through the entitlements, to make sure that you can pay your staff, to make sure that you can do the environmental work. Those things are incredibly capital intensive. And so, African American families earning or having 1/7 of the net worth of white families shows up here as well, right? This is a microcosm of the world. And African American developers don't necessarily have the ability to rely on family and friends to finance their businesses. Some of our graduate school colleagues have had, or classmates have had, and some of our other colleagues. And so access to capital for sure has been the biggest challenge and barrier as we have to provide guarantees and move our businesses forward.
That is tremendously said, Nicole. At the NJRA, we try to give products and services we have a slogan that says we're there first, and we're there first because, just to understand the deal, but also lend to the deal as compared to some of our other financial institutions where they give you the rate, the structure, whatever. We want to say, where's the hole? How can we help you? And so we lend, particularly, as you said, is access to capital. How can we change that? And, Greg, I'm going to come to you with the next questions. We have a new president. I shouldn't say new now, just a year. And, what do you think some of the challenges of his infrastructure bill for minority developers?
Well, I think part of the issue is a lot of the projects that were identified through the infrastructure bill have already been identified over time. They're not just coming together today. There are people that have access to those networks of dollars already and have had access to those dollars. So when they look at the flow of funds that particularly come to through the federal government, and they have a landing place, the question is your business prepared to be able to accept these significant dollars and execute the work? It's a place where African American owned and Latino owned businesses always find themselves behind because capacity building is so important for your business. But to Nicole's point, you need operating capital, business capital to build capacity and to be able to execute on plans and programs. So if you are a small business, you can't take advantage of some of the opportunities that are in front of you because you just don't have the capacity to do it in a timely manner. Now, we spend a lot of time on HBCU campuses. And one of the things, we're big proponents of entrepreneurship, but one fact that's somewhat chilling is that 96% or so of Black businesses are solo entrepreneurs. And it's really hard to be effective when we're talking about this level of dollars in the real estate development industry if you're operating by yourself. So you have to be able to build a team. You have to be able to have a team that can execute, but you have to have the money to be able to survive, to be able to do all of those things. So that's really a major challenge that we're seeing.
Thanks, Greg. I mean, thanks for that value.
Daryl, can I weigh in on this a little bit? I know I don't want to.
Chris, I mean, as long as I've known you, it's hard to say no. So go ahead.
Yeah, I just think what Nicole and Greg are alluding to is it's critically important relative to sort of the uniqueness of operating a real estate development company, because not only are you trying to capitalize the operation of your business, but you're also trying to capitalize projects, and that's very unique in terms of business operations. And there aren't many programs out there that support both capitalizing opportunity and capitalizing the business, as it relates to the space that we're in. So I think it's important to have further dialogue around that. I know for RCG, our biggest challenge is, we don't have access to, a cadre of high net worth individuals and small family offices like majority developers do. And so I think that has to be a conversation that gets advanced as we move this along, because it is quite an impediment not having access to both fuel the opportunity and run the business.
Well, let's follow on, and the whole audience, you can just jump in. I mean, because one of the things I wanted to make this just a dialogue, a great conversation. But after you talk about that, Chris, what can the public sector do to create greater, access to equity? I mean, we at the NJRA, we have limited capital. We can do but so much here. And when we meet with our the private sector, we meet with the banks, but there's limitations there. How can we make this different?
So if I may, I think that Chris, Nicole, and Greg pretty much laid it out, right? Like what the problem is. And I believe what needs to be done, quite frankly, is there has to be a recognition that cities are actually built or revitalized by business people, right? And we happen to be business people here. And one could argue that the typical white developer, let's say, may not have been somebody who was born with a ton of money, but actually had the relationships or connections as he or she went through and got to a point of dominance or the ability to actually execute. What we're, I believe, really missing is this understanding or awareness that if people like us are not capitalized, the people on this call, it's a missed opportunity for the redevelopment of these cities. So there are opportunities that everybody on this call have seen 10 years ago, right? Or we saw that our community actually had the financial resources embedded in it as far as the residents of that community that could support the businesses that we could bring to the community. But the problem was you didn't have the capital to bring the business, right? And so I think there's been a stunting of the growth of urban communities in New Jersey for a very long time, because there wasn't this access to capital that would allow business owners and developers to actually provide services to those communities. So there's a real cost. And if government actually really realized that this was happening, you would have maybe the governor's office, and I'm going to start with the governor's office because that's where a lot of power lies and a lot of connection lies. The governor's office and others would be convening meetings with family offices, like Chris mentioned, family offices and different institutions that actually fund, right? Not the banks per se, but more the people who actually make investments, right? Who put at-risk capital to work. And they do this today. They actually invest in their friends who happen to be connected to them. I'm not upset about it. I'm just saying that that's how it works, right? But if we want to redevelop communities that need redevelopment, let's be honest about it. It's not going to be the government doing so, because it's not the government's role. It's a private sector role.
Correct.
But the people who are actually understanding of that need to make that investment will look like us, because we are from those places and we don't have the inherent biases that exist, right? Because like I said earlier, if you look at places like Plainfield or Irvington or East Orange or Newark, and even if you went back 10, 15, 20, 30 years, they're not simply populated with people who are simply poor. It's a range of income, right? The issue has always been not putting those resources into our communities. And so the people who are at a higher income are actually going to other communities for services. It's why the surrounding communities around around Newark and East Orange and Irvington can actually have a marketplace. The only reason why Montclair or South Orange can actually support itself, it's because of people from these other communities. So we have to really step back and say, how do we make capital available to businesses, to developers who are actually seeing the opportunity? And that capital has to be at risk equity capital, because like Nicole correctly said, and Craig has said it, and Chris has said it, and I can say the same thing. Once you get to the point where you have a deal properly structured, the banks are very willing to lend to a deal, right, that is properly structured and has the right balance sheet behind it, the whole works, because those guys lend their money, right? But if we don't address this issue, what's going to happen is the people on this call, we're ultimately going to get better and better and better at this, because that's why we're here.
So could I just, I don't want to dominate, but I'd like to jump in and make two specific points to that. One is one that's happened in Philadelphia. So for the folks that don't know, Philadelphia is the poorest big city in the country. It has the largest rate of poverty of any major city in the country. And we're dealing with these issues at an incredibly granular level. One thing that happened just 2 days ago, I think it might have been Tuesday actually, is that they just passed through Councilman Derek Green a program where they're calling a public bank. And the public bank is directly intended to provide equity and the capital to small and diverse developers, not just providing the equity, but providing low cost equity and capital available, because we can get many times support from LISC or from the reinvestment fund and others, but that's more expensive capital than others are getting. Our competition is building something right across the street from us, and it's costing us much more money to build it. We're trying to get competitive capital in the ground. The other thing, just to the family office, what Mosaic did specifically, we just announced last month, is we partnered with the family office. Josh Harris is the managing director of Apollo Global Management. He owns the New Jersey Devils and the Prudential Center. He formed a joint venture partnership with our company, where he directed Investly in our operating company, directly into our operating company. And he's investing in the GP capital structure that we're moving forward with to allow us to grow to scale. So we're looking to do both. We think they both matter. You're absolutely right, but we've got to have programs that bring low cost capital to development teams. And then just to add to that, we need the strong balance sheet to support us so that we can go after large scaled projects.
Thank you. I'm going to pass this to my co-moderator, Mr. Phil Woolfolk, because I'm sure he has a list of questions or feedback, and that's why I just want him to be involved, because he says,
oh, sure.
He says sometimes I can overtake things, so I'm gonna sit back a little bit and let Phil do it.
Oh, thanks, Dal. Well, I think there's been some excellent comments as it relates to, how we can address some of these issues and challenges. I'm also of the opinion that, we live in a time where on the public sector side, there is always this communication from a poverty standpoint. All the municipalities, state governments, and governmental agencies all profess to not have the resources to do certain things. And I'm of the opinion that in some cases, it really takes the redeployment of capital in order to get those things done that are important to get done. When you look at low and moderate income communities and African-American communities, those communities thrive based on poverty thresholds. So millions and millions of dollars are poured into these communities to really subsidize the continuation of poverty. And in my opinion, if you want to really start creating wealth, one of the ways to do it is to redeploy some of that capital into wealth-related endeavors. I think in terms of the pre-development costs that Patrick and I think everyone else has kind of mentioned, is one of the impediments that smaller developers have. And I think that the resources are there to address that. And I think prior to the call starting, Patrick mentioned something that I think is very critical. And one of those things is simply relationships, and the relationships that and being able to leverage those relationships. So if you take the African American Chamber of Commerce of New Jersey, you take New Jersey Redevelopment Authority, you take the Economic Development Authority, and you take that collective and bring to the table the banking institutions, foundations, and various parties that have those resources, I think as a collective, we could mobilize the effort to redeploy capital to really be able to support development and be able to support developers like those on the call who are basically getting it done on a shoestring, and many have been for years. But the profitability that's tied to some of this doesn't leave a lot of cash left over for the next deal. So you're basically chasing the dollar for every deal, as opposed to really building a wealth base that allows groups like this to basically be able to support a long-term infrastructure so that there can be some real growth and wealth creation. So I don't buy the fact that the money's not there. I think the money is there. The money is just going into places that support long-term poverty as opposed to supporting growth and development and wealth in our communities.
I'm going to pivot here a little bit to, she's just sitting there biting at the bit. I can see Maria, Maria, one of the things that I've always, loved about dealing with you, what motivates all this energy you have to do what you do? Because it's hard work. I remember you did a project in Newark. I grew up right down the street from it. And it was, you talk about poverty, you talk about crime, you talk about drugs. But what you did, the house, the brick, there was a health center in there. It was for women who went through challenges. And that was motivated by really, your perspective on how you can change your urban community. I mean, if you took that development and you put that in New York, it would have been clearly a $25 million project. Talk about what motivates you to do things like that.
Well, I live by a motto: never give up. And every project has taken an immense amount of work to get it done, because the conversation that we are having here this morning is a very, very old conversation. I have been hearing about it and talking about it pretty much since I started in this business. The biggest problem that minority communities and women-owned businesses, and then if you are minority and women-owned, that's a double problem, right? That we have is access to capital, and everything that we are talking about has been there before. The New Jersey Redevelopment Agencies, the New Jersey Economic Development, the DCAs, they have been around for a long time. Yet, this conversation and this quest is still as fresh as ever, because we never come up with real solutions. It is money there. It always has been money there. But most of the money does not come to us. Most of the money goes to established companies with connections, companies that have access to the mayors and the governors and, the legislature. Those are the people that can make it happen and can make it happen fast. I know that if I had been a male, I would have been much, much farther, because without any doubt, I do amazing work. And I do the real work. I cater to the people that need it the most. I have a special needs housing. I have affordable housing. And my field of operation has been the places where nobody else wanted to work. But I am a woman and I am a Latina woman. So those are tremendous hurdles, Why did I was able to make it? Because I do not give up. And this is, if I would have a young developer, a young minority developer will come to me and ask me for some advice, I believe that I will tell him or her it's not going to be easy. It's very difficult, and I don't have to list the laundry list of difficulties because everybody did so. You know, we have to be, in many instances, the leader of the business and the staff of the business, because we cannot hire, because we don't have the capital to attract talent. So we have to do it all, wear all hats. But don't give up. Don't give up, because if the people that are in this panel were able to make it, you can make it. It's not going to be easy. You know, it's not going to be, you are not going to grow as fast and as strong as you wish, but you can do it, you know, because if you don't give up, there are resources for the persistent, for the people that believe that they can do it. So, you know, the bad news is that the challenges that we spoke about are still there. But we are also going to have new challenges. And I am talking from my own experience. We know we are now maybe turning the corner after 2 years of COVID. Some of our businesses were tremendously impacted. You know, some cities pretty much shut down. I have been trying to get approvals for projects in the zoning and planning levels in Newark for 8 months, and I don't see the light at the end of the tunnel. You know, it's like, oh, we have a backlog. You know, we have all these enormously big projects in Newark that are taking all the resources, so take a number, you know. So in the meantime, our companies are not getting the resources that we need to stay alive. So we are going to have new challenges. It's not going to be easy. It's probably going to be more difficult going forward for the next few years.
If I could chime in just for a second, Darrell, I think, you know, a lot of times when you look at the public sector and you look at the various opportunities that are there, they're built around issues of poverty. And so, in my opinion, it really needs to be, capital needs to be redeployed in order to make some of these things happen, in order to really provide the pre-development funding that developers need to get their projects done. So I don't buy the notion that the money is not there. I think the money is being spent to really continue poverty as opposed to building wealth in our communities. And I think when you take the African American, the Chamber of Commerce, the Redevelopment Authority, Economic Development Authority, and a host of others, the banking community, if you're able to coalesce those different folks together, and Patrick mentioned it earlier about just relationships, I think basically you could coalesce the funds that you need in order to help developers really be able to grow, prosper, and create wealth within our communities.
Well,
Darrell, if I may, real quick, because Maria really alluded to something that's very important, and I'll say it this way: this has to be a public policy priority, and I'm going to give you something very tangible, because part of I understand what we're trying to accomplish here and have some takeaways is what can we do specifically. You know, Greg talked about balance sheet, and Darrell, you talked about, you know, what can government do. So I'm going to give you something. You know, government can play a role in backstopping minority developers' balance sheet by using some type of credit enhancement tool. Okay, you know, we have mortgage insurance programs that backstop debt. You can create a similar program to backstop, you know, a minority developer's balance sheet. You know, that's something that's very tangible, is easily done. HMFA, and I know we have a lot of government officials on the line, so you said you wanted to have a real talk conversation, so let's do that. You know, HMFA has a deep well of reserves, and you could use that as a mechanism to backstop, you know, our balance sheets. And I'm not saying it's got to be dollar for dollar. It could be top 20% loss or top 30% loss. Similarly to the way Sonny Mae and Remick operate in New York for debt. And you can create a similar program. So, if everybody is serious about this, particularly on the public side, these things can be done tomorrow. It's very tangible. And as I said earlier, so that's one example. That's one suggestion. And something else, because as I mentioned earlier, you have to couple opportunity with capital. It's not just enough to have the capital, you have to have a pathway to opportunity. So take HMFA. We have a tax credit program. Quite frankly, I think the tax credit program in New Jersey functions as a set-aside program for majority developers. I'm just be real. And so, and I know a lot of people don't like to talk about set-asides, but it'd be very easy for HMFA tomorrow to have a set-aside for minority developers. Just like years ago, they had a set-aside for nonprofit developers. But every time you try to tinker with that QAP to make it advantageous for a different cadre, a different look of developer to participate, they take it away. They took away the nonprofit set aside. They added a point system for experience. All of these are impediments that can easily be challenged and changed to create opportunity. So there are two specifics: backstop the balance sheet through a credit enhancement program, and open up the tax credit program for minority developers. So those are the two things that I would like to leave everybody with today.
Well, Chris, I was, just amazing that you would say that, because that's the direction I was going on. Because the gloves finally came off, and I think that's what we need, particularly from, the government side. Is we need to know what we can talk about barriers. We all know what they are. We know access to capital, but how can we do something different? I mean, and that's what we need to. We need to rethink how we lend. Yeah. I mean, I'm a trained lender, and I go to the 5 C's of credit. I go to capital, LTV, all that crazy stuff. We had a discussion about surety companies and how you had to get bonding. It is almost impossible for minority developers to get bonding because they use the same credit underwriting process that a bank uses. I'm not here to put them down. They're regulated just like banks are. I get that. But how do we think outside the box? So your thoughts, Chris, were right on point. Patrick, I can see your head just going all over the place.
Sure. Look, I think Maria, said it really well, right? Like, we've been talking about this issue for 20, 30 years. Philip, you said something very important, right? It's about the redeployment of capital. I mean, let's be real. Government tax the public, right? And then they decide how to use those funds. And we've had all kinds of philosophical discussions about it, going all the way back to Ayn Rand, right? And libertarian theories, et cetera, right? So we clearly make decisions as government what we're going to incentivize, right? It's very easy to do it, and it's being done. And so sometimes I get to the point where I'm like, if we're just going to have cute conversations about what my issues are, right? Like it's always the same thing. Every time we have one of these forums, it's the same statement we've always making. Maria was making it before us. Chris was making it before I got on the scene. Nicole was making it before I did, right? I'm sure Greg has, and Philip, you know it pretty well, right? It's an access to capital issue. So just tell me what it is, right? Do you want me to keep scrambling and clawing my way up? Do you want me to keep giving up, on average, 75 or 80% of my equity in a deal just so I can make it? And I have no problem making it because I am going to survive, right? And that's what everybody else here has done. But understand that it's extremely hard. Maria expressed it really well. This is a very, very hard business, and we're starting at a disadvantage. And if we as a society want to essentially say, if you start at a disadvantage, stay in a disadvantage, or if we as a society want to, to digress slightly, look at the Black person that, let's say, makes it out of poverty, extreme poverty, and gets to, let's say, grad school or something, and we go, hey, that guy made it. Yeah, but he or she had to be like a superhuman, right? And that's essentially what we're doing as developers, right? I am not asking you to give me something for free. Everybody on this panel has demonstrated the ability to get a deal done really well, right? So if you're going to be the EDA or the NJRA, right, then you need to stop being a bank because they're already banks. And if your role is to actually assist in the economic revitalization of these communities, you need to start making equity investments, right? And you need to have a different profile. You need to become the family office, if you will, right? You need to become my friend over here, if I happen to be from the right social status or whatever, that has a ton of money, and he's like, I'm going to drop $10 million on you or $5 million on you because I believe in what you're doing and you've demonstrated it. Or like Greg just said, you know, fortunately for him, and I commend you for making that happen. And I'm sure you struggled for 15, 20 years trying to get to that point where you finally have someone who's like, I'm going to drop some money on you. So that's what the EDA and NJRA has to decide. Otherwise, you are just a bank.
Yeah.
And they're better banks than you.
Can I just, what, I
Than you are. And I'm just being real.
You're right.
So tell me where you want me to be, right? If you want me to continue as I am going to keep getting stronger. Everybody here will. Maria said it really well, right? And I commend you. I've never met you before, but I'm sure it's been extremely, extremely hard. And think about, and I want everybody to really get the understanding of the missed opportunity. This woman has been developing since 1997, 1998. Don't you think that she saw a ton of things that she could have done that would have made these communities better if she had access to capital? Do you believe we would have had to wait until 2012 for people to suddenly decide that Newark is worth investing in when she knew that in 1997 and 1998? That is the missed opportunity. That is the opportunity cost. So if you're a government and you want to fix this, then you need to start taking stock of exactly what the need is, which a lot of people have expressed way before I'm saying anything, and they've been doing it for 20, 30 years, and you go in that direction, or you are institutions that are just there pretending to do something. Or like Chris said, you're HMFA and you have these rules about experience points and all kinds of garbage that are, let's be real, they're there set up, right, to benefit certain people. And then the rest of us on this call, we need to get our acts together, start sitting down, start talking about our own damn agenda and pushing that agenda forward, because that's what this game is.
Can I just
Nicole,
can I just interrupt? Yes, I appreciate that, and it's a great point, Patrick. What Chris said is 100% right, and this is the job of the government. The government has enriched majority developers for many, many, many years through giving them these projects that Chris is talking about. All of these affordable housing projects have made majority developers very, very, very wealthy. And they've made them wealthy many times in our neighborhoods. So not only do the folks in our neighborhoods not own homes, they're not able to take advantage of any tax deduction for interest on their mortgages because they don't have mortgages because they don't own homes. So as Greg talks about wealth building and building the ecosystem, we're the ones who, we as minority developers, are giving our contracts to minority architects, GCs where they exist, though it's very difficult to find them because of the bonding issue, right? All of these folks, and then housing people in a way that I believe is much more supportive. The government is responsible for making sure that we can build the infrastructure just as they have done for the majority community. So I take, we have to have the government involved, and the government needs to reach out to private investors and lenders. These banks who continue to invest in deals across the board need to be incentivized to invest in Black developers, and in our case, in Black businesses, because the government can force that. The government can force those folks to get involved in what we're doing. And that's what has to happen. There needs to be a disincentive to not investing in Black development and firms and other businesses.
Well, we're gonna first of all, this has been very lively discussions, but time is never on our hand. We're gonna have to, and I can tell you from the NJRA's perspective, we have, under really led by Leslie, and we have had some really good conversations. I'm going to say every week we've been meeting internally to try to overcome these issues because they're massive. And I must say, from the inside, we are talking about it. But to Chris's point, we got to do more than talk. We got to do something tangible. And, I can tell you that HMFA is well aware of those issues, Chris. I can tell you about the EDA, and we're trying to come up with something in the next couple of months that changes that paradigm. Because we just can't talk. We got to do something. So,
may I make one comment, Daryl?
Yes,
because
Greg, you have like 30 seconds, Greg.
Right, just to be relevant to early developers, people who are just starting out. Whatever we're recommending from the government standpoint, those things usually take time, right? Even if they happen at all. But one thing you can do, and that kept us alive, because frankly, we didn't eat for 3 years. And when I say we didn't eat anything. You can partner and find partners, find people that complement you, that keep you alive and allow you to continue to do the work and work on your projects. It also gives you the opportunity to build a pipeline, because without that, you won't find investors. So please think about that. Partner. If you're trying to do this by yourself, it's going to be an incredible struggle for you.
Thanks, Greg. So Venitra or Oscar, do we have people in some questions in the chat room? Venitra, Oscar? No. Okay, no, we don't. Thank you. Okay, so right now I'm going to just go around and get some closing remarks from everyone. But more importantly, thank you. I mean, this has been very engaging. I have a lot of work to do. I mean, but I know that with the support of the people I have here, I will get it done. I mean, these are no quiet folks here. I know Patrick will call me and tell me, "What are you doing, Daryl?" So, but it's important that we hear this. It's important that we do something, because like I've been in this industry like everyone else over 25 years. And quite frankly, I'm tired of it. I mean, because I think we have to do things differently. I mean, we did something during COVID. I don't know if people are aware, we provided some grants to businesses that were hurting. And it was a small amount, but it allowed us to pivot. And Leslie said, let's pivot. Let's do something different. And that's what we have to do, something when we talk about the paradigm. We got to do something different. We can't just talk about it. We didn't go and ask for permission. We just did it. And we put $25 million out there, and it was oversubscribed, and it clearly wasn't enough, but we changed the process. And that's what we have to do here. So I'm going to open it up to, I'm going to start off with Maria and give some closing remarks. Can't hear you, Maria.
Okay, besides access to capital, technology is a challenge for me, okay? I think this was a wonderful discussion. A lot of very good points were brought forward, and I really, really hope that we take advantage of this moment. We are in a moment of change. A lot of us are gonna suffer because it's the weaker links that suffer in times of change and times of crisis. And I believe that some of our business have suffered a setup in the past 2 years, and we are going to need help. If not, a lot of minority and women-owned business will just disappear.
Thank you, Maria. Nicole?
Again, I want to thank you, Daryl and Leslie, for supporting us throughout the way. I think I would echo what Maria said. This is our time. We need to continue having these kinds of conversations and supporting those that follow us. I would also say that we need to be partnering with one another. I mean, there are folks on this panel that I haven't worked with that I look forward to working with, right? And everyone out there doing this kind of work should be looking to partner with folks who are similar to them, who have the same kinds of challenges, and making sure that we build that strength in numbers. And, you know, honestly, I think that we're the ones who are going to be doing right by one another. We're not going to be giving away 80% of the fees that Patrick was talking about. So we need to join together and continue to beat the drum.
Thank you, Nicole. Patrick?
So I like what Greg said about, you know, this is still a good business to be in. I know you didn't say it like that, Greg, but I know that's what you meant. And so I want to leave on an optimistic note. It is a hard business. It's a hard business for anyone who's in it. You are going to have some challenges, and I'm speaking to people who are interested in getting into development. We're not trying to dissuade you. We're actually trying to encourage you. And I think it's wonderful that everybody on this call happened to be on the call, and it's good that Daryl and Phil and NJRA, you know, choose to continue to do these forums, because you can argue that we've sort of figured it out to some extent, and they're bringing us back because we see them as real partners. And so we're coming back to talk to you. So what I'm going to say to you is take a page out of Maria's book and Nicole's book, you know, and everybody else here. And it's effort, right? You got to put that effort into it. There's going to be some sacrifice, like Greg said. You may not eat for 3 years. I think he said something very important that might have been missed, which is, and he probably was talking about maybe even like a personal life partner. Make sure that when you're doing this, that the people around you are extremely supportive of you, because you're gonna need them. It's hard. It always makes me emotional talking about this, but it's a tough business, and I love it. I love doing it. I love the challenge of it. I love seeing the impact that we make in our communities, and we're going to continue to do that. And I encourage you to do it, and I encourage you to try not to be too short-sighted. Like, you're not necessarily going to make money right away. All of us here have actually had our own struggles, or we've worked for different people and we had to put the work in. And sometimes the best thing you can do is gain that experience. And I'm not dissuading you from jumping right in, but it is going to be work, and you can get there. And just remember, there are always going to be hurdles and obstacles, and it'll get better. And so I just encourage you to keep doing what you're doing and staying there. And I commend everyone on this panel. You're people that I actually admire and respect, every single one of you. So thank you.
Thanks, Patrick. Chris?
So, you know, first, again, let me thank you, Daryl, and Philip, and the NJRA writ large for sponsoring, hosting this event. It's very, very important. And I would just say that the solutions aren't really that complicated, right? You know, that we can address some of these concerns almost in the immediate. And certainly it does take time, you know, as a developer, and everybody should know this, particularly those who are trying to get into this business. It's not like you go out and buy widgets, price them, and sell them, right? You know, it's a different type of business, but it's one that's critically important, because you know, I got into the business because I wanted to change my community, you know, and for me, it was something that was tangible. You know, I can see it, I can touch it, I can feel it. But I just, you know, I'll say what I said before. I think we need to be real. I think we need to agitate for change. I think we're all in a position to advocate for change. And I think some of the solutions that we've talked about today are within grasp if we demand it. So I would leave with that. And I know, again, there are a lot of people who are listening in. I know there are government officials who are listening in. And I think everybody has to be held to account, because this is something that has to happen. And as we said, Maria said it too. And I mean, I've been talking about this, you know, for a very, very long time. Daryl, you know that we've had this conversation, you know, on many a time. So it's a great space to be in. There are tremendous opportunities in front of us. And I just suggest we need to be very proactive in terms of, addressing these issues that we talked about today.
Thanks, Chris. Greg, save the best for last.
Well, certainly not the best considering this group. But thank you. This is really enjoyable. I wish we had more time to talk about it. What I would say that's been the most important for our company, my partner Leslie and I started it 14 years ago, is one of the key areas is we decided to be the change that we advocated for. And what that meant for us is not only focusing on projects that we were going to work on, but also focusing on people who we weren't going to work with. And we believe heavily in the power of no. And what that means is if you're not committed to having Black and Latino and women at the top of the decision-making team, we don't want to work with you. If you're not committed in bringing Black architects, women-owned architecture firms into the ecosystem, we don't want to work with you. If you're not committed to Black or Latino engineers, we don't want to work with you. And if you're not committed to an ethos of moderate and low-income people not only living in your spaces, but being able to invest, we've started an investment tool in all of our projects where people can invest as little as $500 in any of our projects that scale from $1 million to $500 million. So if that's something that doesn't work for you, then we're not somebody who will work with you. And that's where I think we all have to stand. And that's where we start to advocate from a place of strength, because we have a value system that really aligns well with what we believe is right for our communities. So I would leave you with that when you're out there and this work is so hard, I don't think we should give any illusions on the difficulty in doing this work if you're not wealthy, because it is difficult to do. That you have to stand on something that drives you and causes you to get up every day and continue to go. And it really is your values. And so I'm in a value-based business. I love the work that I do. I wouldn't do it any other way, but I would only do it if I believed that we were helping businesses and communities of color in a meaningful and economic way.
Thanks, Greg. Phil, as my co-moderator, any parting words?
Thanks, Darryl. I'd just like to thank all the panelists. This has been an excellent conversation. And one of the things I'll say is, we built this country. We're taxpayers, and the money that is being spent in the public sector, that's our money. And I think we need to really do a better job at demanding how that money is deployed and how that money is spent. And I can't think of a more worthwhile endeavor than to improve the lives of our folks and improve these communities and really begin to really trend in the right direction as it relates to closing the wealth gap. It's incredibly, I'm with Patrick, you some of this, it brings tears to your eyes because, right now we're waiting for this disparity study. Everybody on this call knows that there are disparities. I don't need a report. And I think the dollars that are out there, the tax dollars that are out there, those are our dollars, and we want it for our communities.
Thanks, Phil. So on behalf of the NJRA, our Governor Phil Murphy, Lieutenant Governor Sheila A. Oliver, and our President and CEO Leslie A. Anderson, I want you to know that this is not words, that talking points. I've been and like I said, I've been here for almost 8 years, and this is one of the first times I've seen that we had concrete dialogue to change the process, because we're getting it. We get the heat. We feel it. But this time we're doing something differently. I'm talking to the EDA almost every day, HMFA, about concrete changes to how we allocate resources to people who look like you and I and on this conference. So don't think this is just, we're going to end this call and we're going to go away. No, my job is 24/7 now. But I love, this is what I love doing. This is what Leslie A. Anderson loves doing, because we're just not going to leave this and leave you out there. So call us, reach out to us. For the people in the chat room, there's going to be another session coming on that's going to talk about some of our goods and services that the NJRA provides, that the African American Chamber of Commerce provides. But once again, thank all of you. This conversation can go on forever. I mean, Greg said something that was important. You know, we need to develop friendships. And I must say, one of my best friends is Christopher Garland. We talk about this so much with our wives and think that, you know, that we got something going on. But more importantly, it's just that important to us that we, you know, we are fortunate that Chris is fortunate on his end as his developer. And I'm fortunate to do a job that I love because I'm born and raised in Newark. I see the devastation. I see what Phil talks about. We don't need a disparity study. I mean, because we know it. We see it right up, down any of these urban areas, and it's right in your face. But I want you to know that from the inside at the NJRA and from the government, we are trying to finally change that paradigm. So once again, thank all of you for joining in this great discussion, and have a great and peaceful day. Thank you. Oscar?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Hello, everyone. I think Daryl, Phil, and thank our speakers today. Very engaging, very impactful. And we ran a little bit over time, but that's okay because of the conversation was relevant to the time. And we wanted to make sure that everyone has the opportunity to express and offer options and possible strategies for moving forward. We will continue this discussion. And at this time, I'd like to introduce Craig Sawyer, who's been our lead instructor since our inception. And he's going to lead us into our session 2. Craig?
Oscar, thank you. Welcome, everyone, to session 2 of New Jersey Redevelopment Authority webinar on minority developers, investment, equity, and access to opportunities in New Jersey. And my name is Craig Sawyer. Like Oscar, I really enjoyed the panel discussion, and I wish we had more time to discuss some of the challenges and opportunities faced by minority developers, particularly hearing some of the strategies and tools which we can be implemented or advocated for to help balance the playing field. Particularly the role of lenders and government, I think really stood out and being able to implement some of those tools. This session on capital resources and support strategies will avail some of the capital resources available are being created to help strengthen and build the capacity of minority developers and help bridge the inequities in the real estate development field. Pause. The CLE word is burgundy. Now it's time for our various speakers. Welcome. Our speakers today will each give a formal introduction of who they are along with their presentations. Today we have 4 honored speakers, and I will introduce them in order of their upcoming presentation. I'm looking at my screen, and I did not see Rajan on the screen, Rajan Robinson. But today's speakers for session 2 will be Andre Simon, the Vice President, Managing Director for Structured Lending and Investment with True Fund Financial Services, Rajan Robinson, Managing Director for Goldman Sachs Urban Investment Group, Kayla Jeffrey, Senior Loan Officer with Leviticus Fund, and Janelle Johnson, Vice President of Business Development and Investment with New Jersey Redevelopment Authority. So our first speaker today will be Andre Simon. Andre?
Thank you, Craig, and good morning, everyone. I'm not 100% sure if you're actually able to see the slideshow, so if you can, if someone can let me know, that would be extremely helpful. But I'll just start off by saying my name is Andrew Simon. I am the VP and MD of our equity platform here at, oh, there you go, perfect. Thank you, Kayla. At True Fund Financial Services. True Fund is a CDFI that's headquartered in New York City. We do have side offices in Louisiana, Alabama, and Texas. Some of our core products is general business loans, and our mission is geared towards reducing the racial wealth gap. So you will see a lot of our products are geared towards either targeted at BIPOC communities or low income communities. As it pertains to the different type of products that we serve, we have disaster products. So, in Hurricane Katrina or all natural disasters, we're able to put together something in a relatively quick time and create a product that can provide some need. Similar to PPP, we were a PPP lender that we were able to serve, on a national level, including New Jersey. We were also able to provide new market tax credits through our allocations. And, in that, there's a bunch of other, very exciting and cool products that, we do serve. But I wanted to be more conscious of our time today. And I wanted to also, kind of address, some of the comments from session 1 this morning. Because I think there's a lot of things that kind of pertain directly to this conversation and what we'll get into. So I'll move on straight to the second to last slide and skip you guys a lot of back information about just TrueFund being a CDFI and all of the great things that we do. And I'll kind of link it directly with, why I'm here today and answer some of the questions from session 1. So session 1, a lot of the conversation was around access to capital. Particularly, I heard the word equity, and it was also, the need or the call, I should say, to have the city and state officials step up and say, hey, we do acknowledge that there is a discrepancy between BIPOC developers being able to get access to capital, and we will, target funds specifically for this group in order to level the playing field. So, back in 2020, TrueFund, we heard that call. It was a call of, there is roughly 5% of the industry, the real estate asset management industry or developers, are people of color or women-owned businesses. And we ask ourselves, why is that? Why is this industry, so, male, white dominated? And it was very similar to what was echoed earlier here in session 1. When you are a developer, enabling that you're able to get ownership through your product or through your projects is getting equity investments, right? So you have to be able to fund your project with ideally your own equity, so you can get ownership of that project. So it's not just creating a project so you can get developer fees, but it's creating a project so you can get developer fees in addition to recurring cash flow, which ideally only occurs if you have ownership of the project. In order for you to get ownership of the project, you need to come into it with capital. Roughly, sometimes for a pre-development facility for a project, let's say 80 units or so, you're looking at anywhere from $250,000 to $500,000 of pre-development capital that's needed for you to get ownership of that deal. So I don't know about you, but there isn't a lot of folks that have that capital just sitting there. What that really does, it allows or it forces BIPOC developers to reach out to others to share their deal, right? Reach out to others to get that equity, and in return for that equity, they give up ownership of their deal, right? So they say, okay, you know what? I'll take a loss. I'll just get a developer fee for actually creating this building, but I'll pass it off to whoever I get the equity from, and that's a trade-off that a lot of BIPOC developers have to make, and it's a very difficult conversation, and it's a very difficult thing to do. But they have to do it because they don't necessarily have a choice, right? Unless you have deep pockets, or unless you have that family office that funds you, so you can do that. So I think we can jump straight to the second to last slide, which is on the I think slide 7. So back in 2020, TrueFund partnered with the Ford Foundation and Morgan Stanley to create an equity fund that would address this concern. The name of the equity fund was called the Impact Developers Fund, and it was a $26 million initiative that was geared towards BIPOC developers on a national level who were focusing on affordable housing. So, when you think of, this fund and the product, it was an equity product. So we invested directly on the balance sheet of these developers. So not necessarily on the project level, right? Where a lot of people come in right now, and where there's a lot of, housing funds to support the project level, because that's easier, right? Because it's it's collateralized with the actual building or with the project. We came in and we say, hey, we acknowledge that as a developer, you still have a company to run while your pre-development dollars is stuck in a deal until you close, right? You have to pay employees, you have to keep the lights on, You have to make your debt service coverage. There's a lot of different things that you have to do before you're able to recycle that capital. So we said, okay, let's come up with a product where we can be ideally that family office for these BIPOC developers, right? We can say, hey, X, here's $1 million, here's $3 million coming in at the parent level in a preferred equity stake. And what that meant is, for the developer, they ideally were getting, let's say, a couple $1 million that they can use on their balance sheet and they can leverage. Now they can go to financial institutions and say, hey, I now have leverage. My company is now worth X. And in case of construction shortfall, I can back up whatever that gap is, right? And now they have real marketing power. Now, developers are able to apply for RFPs independently. Now they're able to fund their pre-development independently, and more importantly, get rightful ownership of their deals independently. And the demand for that product was overwhelming because and rightfully so. Just based on the call this morning, we reached out to BIPOC developers and said, hey, let's take a look at your company, let's take a look at your pipeline, and let's see how we can help you grow. So, just to give an example of the type of uses or a little bit more of the structure, we're talking, a couple $1 million equity investment at the parent level. Average term was eight years. You have an average dividend, which is very similar to interest. We can get into that. That was, between, I would say, a blended rate of 8 to 10%. And, you had quarterly dividend payments on that. So how ideally it worked is, you got this equity cash infusion into your company on the parent level, and you were able to keep that on there for a couple of years and made dividend payments, so quarterly interest payments ideally. You call it dividend because it's an investment, not debt, but, it's very similar, right? So you made those quarterly payments on the capital. And that capital could be used for a number of different reasons. Some developers used it for payroll, right, to pay their employees. Some use it for project level financing. So, for example, they took some equity from us, invested it directly into a project, got ownership of that project, completed the project, got to closing, got the money back, recycled it in another project, and so forth. The only criteria around our structure was that all of the projects that the capital was directly used for had to be affordable housing projects. And because it's an affordable housing fund. So fast forward a couple of months, that fund has been fully committed for 5 investees across the country. And where we are right now with that is we're in the middle of fundraising for our second fund. So this map shows a little bit about where the first fund was and the different companies in which we were able to invest in and get some capital out the door. Nicole was on session 1, out of Genesis. You'll see there on the map. We're happy to work with Genesis, who also has investments in New Jersey. So now we are asking, in addition, so, before I talk more about where we're going, we've also partnered with the Community Preservation Corporation last year to launch a second fund. So that fund is geared more towards BIPOC developers who may be less established. So we're talking about folks who has 1,000 units or less of affordable housing units completed. So, the Impact Developers Fund was geared more for established developers, and ideally the way in which we define established developers is developers who have over 1,000 units completed, right? So that's like the major differentiator when we talk about emerging and when we talk about established. We've seen the need for a lot of emerging developers, within the space that has a couple, of units and really, need more to execute their pipeline. Came up once we launched IDF, and through their True Access initiative, CPC was a great partner. They provide construction financing, permanent financing. So if we are able to come in on equity at the parent level, developers can use it for pre-development and even sometimes construction. And then you have, a partner like CPC get to take on the construction and perm, then you have a really good arrangement, right? So that was a small initiative. That was a $6 million JV that was launched in October. That initiative, because of our footprint, is geared towards New York-based and operated BIPOC developers. So moving forward into, we're talking to, mainly New Jersey developers or New Jersey folks, which I also live in New Jersey, and just so you know, there's a lot of connections here. How could this be helpful? So with regards to the Impact Developers Fund and even the JV that we had with CPC, TrueFund has positioned itself as a real leader within the CDFI industry as it pertains to our equity platform and our ability to quickly and accurately underwrite these transactions and deploy capital into this space. So for the extent that there is someone with capital on this call, or someone that have capital, and they're really trying to make a gap and get help BIPOC developers who just don't know how to do it, TrueFund is a general partner. So we are able to come in, and deploy that capital in a relatively quick time frame and do so very accurately. So the question now and the conversation isn't about, well, we love to invest, we just don't know how, or we can't get around our own internal regulations. I'm literally providing you with a blueprint that says, hey, we've created these funds, we've executed on the capital, we have a system in place. And if you have capital, we will also execute for you as well. So if you're out there and you, for example, you just want a fund in New Jersey to support, BIPOC developers in New Jersey, please reach out. We can help you with that. And where we are from the Impact Developers Fund and fundraising, so we are planning to raise an additional $26 million by the end of the summer. And that fund, again, is a national platform geared towards developers, BIPOC developers with over 1,000 units under their belt. So we will be taking applications once that second fundraise is completed in the summer, more going towards the fall of this year. So to the extent that you do have projects in pipeline, you are a BIPOC developer, and you do have 1,000 units or more of completed projects, we're happy to have those conversations with you as we go into the second application of the fund. So I'll stop there. I know we are a little bit crunch on time, and I want to leave some time for Q&A. But again, I just wanted to talk with you all about our equity platform here to say, hey, we do recognize that a lot of this conversation that was brought up in session 1 is an issue. But we've also created a product, and we have resources and a whole team here dedicated to resolving that issue. But like everything else, we have limited capital being a CDFI. And to the extent that there is partners out there that, want to do this work, we are happy to do this work with you as well. You only need to reach out. So I'll stop there, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Andre, for your excellent presentation. We look forward for you coming back for Q&A. Our next presenter will be Urajan Robinson. He is the Managing Director for Goldman Sachs Urban Investment Group. Welcome, Raj.
Thank you.
Thanks, Greg. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes.
Great. Are you able to put the slide set over up?
Mm-hmm.
There we go. Cool. All right. Well, thanks again, and good morning, everyone. I'm Urajan Robinson. I go by Raj Robinson. As Craig mentioned, I'm a managing director in the Urban Investment Group, or UIG as we call it. And what we are is a double bottom line investing and lending platform that sits within Goldman Sachs. We've been around for a little over 20 years now. And what we started out as is essentially a JV equity investing platform where we were investing JV equity in real estate projects in underserved areas, where we'd be 75 to 85% of the capital stack. The developer would be the balance, and then we promote the developer upon achieving certain hurdle rates. And so we were doing that, call it no more than $100 million a year, that in back then, call it Harlem or downtown Brooklyn, Brooklyn's of the world back then. And we did it for a couple of reasons. One, to be opportunistic, because you can make some pretty attractive risk-adjusted returns by investing in areas if you could understand the tax incentives associated with those investments. But more importantly, to be catalytic and spur revitalization of those underserved communities. So we've always been a double bottom line, mission-oriented mission-oriented platform within Goldman. But fast forward to 2008, Goldman became a bank, and subject to the Community Reinvestment Act, which, as everyone knows, requires banks to invest in underserved areas where they do business. And so it was a natural transition for UIG to take over that mandate. And so since then, over the last 14 years, we've grown quite a bit. We went from doing, call it no more than $100 million a year in JV equity investing to now doing a broad range of products, as you can see on the left of the screen there. And this past year, we did about $3 billion in debt and equity financing, and this year we're targeting $3.5 billion. And usually in any given year, a little more than half of that is on the equity side. And so when I say equity, we still do a lot of that JV equity that we started out doing, but we also do a lot of tax credit equity investing. So we do a lot of LIHTC equity investing, new markets tax credit equity investing. We're actually vertically integrated in the sense that we have a CDE as well, and historic tax credit equity investing. And then on the debt side, we do a lot of construction debt, construction mini perm debt. Think, new markets leverage loans or other sorts of, bridge lending that's a little longer in tenure than a typical construction loan. We do a lot of pre-development debt as well as pre-development equity. So our capital is pretty flexible in that sense, and we're often in multiple parts of the capital stack on the same transaction. So we might do the debt as well as the tax credit equity, as well as the JV equity, depending on what the needs of the project and the sponsor are. You can see from the middle, the key impact section that, we've expanded, beyond housing. Housing is still a core part of our business, but we also do a lot of commercial investing and lending as well, be it retail or community facility space or FQHCs or charter schools and the like. And then there's a portion of our business that's in the small business space as well, as the built environment. But overall, we're in about a dozen geographies so far: New York, Atlanta, California, Chicago, Florida, DC, and certainly New Jersey. We're actually one of the largest institutional investors, certainly in Newark. We've done close to $1 billion in Newark, New Jersey, dating back to then Mayor Cory Booker's time in office. But we've also invested in Patterson, Jersey City. We've done some investing in Camden, and are open to other parts of New Jersey as it's a key geography for us. Next slide. And I wanted to highlight this slide because we've really made a concerted effort to focus on expanding our relationships with minority, with MWBE sponsors. And this Black Developers Initiative Affordable Housing Fund is an example of that. So this is a $75 million LIHTC fund that we closed in December of last year with NAHT, where all of the capital that we're deploying will go toward sponsors that have that are Black led or have at least one Black principal making major decisions in the organization. And so we're very proud of that. And even more so on this fund, it's not just about Black developers. It's also there's a requirement that over 50% of the capital be put towards Black female led sponsors as part of our 1 Million Black Women Initiative, which I can touch on in just a moment, that we launched last year. And so simultaneously with closing this fund, we closed the first transaction under it, which is South Meadows, which was done with Laurel Street. The gentleman before me, Andre, mentioned their involvement with Laurel Street as well. They're a great organization. It's led by Dion Nelson, who's amazing. This transaction was an 80-unit affordable housing development in Rome, Georgia, in South Rome. For those of you unfamiliar with Rome, South Rome is a bit more underserved than Rome proper, and so it's important investment for that part of Rome, Georgia. But it's 80 units for affordable housing. But not only is it affordable housing, there's also a fresh food component, given the partnership with the adjacent community farm that will provide fresh food to the residents of this project, as well as an early learning center that's providing daycare services at no cost to the tenants of this project. So, and we put about $18 million into of LIHTC equity, both federal and state, into that transaction. But that's just an example of the sort of project that we're looking to finance. In order to fit within this fund, we're looking to get at least $10 million out of the door. So it needs to have a little bit of size to it in order to make it where it would fit into this fund. But we're with this fund, we're able to do things like provide incremental pricing that can help with increasing contingency, for instance, for sponsors that may not have the balance sheet that we might otherwise look to underwrite to for our construction project. So we can be pretty flexible with the capital here. But outside of this fund, I'll just say we really are pushing and leaning into developing more relationships with minority sponsors. And so even if it's not a LIHTC project, we're very active in workforce housing and just mixed use development broadly. So please do reach out to us, because we really are looking to increase those partnerships. And the last slide here is just not the last. Sorry, the third slide. I forgot about the good old disclosure stuff. But this slide here is just a little more information on 1 Million Black Women, which some of you may know is a huge initiative that was announced and launched last year, and it's a Goldman Sachs broad initiative. But given the overlap between the initiatives of this program and UIG, it's obviously a natural fit that UIG carry the lion's share of the capital outlay for the program. But what we're looking to do here is invest $10 billion over a 10-year period in projects aimed at narrowing opportunity gaps that exist for Black women in this country. And there's also a $100 million philanthropic component to it as well. And and with this initiative, we're looking at touching on a lot of needs within the community: early childhood education, healthcare, housing. It's just a broad mandate here. So again, it's just another example of our efforts to increase our relationships with minority sponsors, Black sponsors, and certainly Black female led sponsors. So we're short on time, so I'll stop there.
Raj, thank you for that very informative presentation. And I challenge everyone. So I think I heard somebody's computer call. I challenge everyone who's participating to reach out to Raj. We will make sure that your contact information gets out at the end of the webinar, as well as we'll send out a communication to those participants today. I'd like to go. Hey, how you doing, Craig?
Yes. Yeah, again, thank you, Raj. Because of time, go directly into our next presenter, Kayla Jeffries, the Senior Loan Officer with Leviticus Fund.
Hi, everyone.
Welcome, Kayla. How you doing?
I've actually just gotten a title change, so Senior Investment Officer now at Leviticus Fund. And I'm
Congratulations. Wow, that's very nice.
I'm so glad to be on with everyone. I'd like to talk a little bit about Leviticus first. So we are a 38-year-old organization. We're a community development financial institution that was founded by a group of religious leaders that chose to invest locally in early childcare programs and education programs in the tri-state area. But presently, our lending is really focused on supporting nonprofit organizations that are developing affordable and supportive housing, community health centers, chartered public schools, and healthy food access projects. But most recently, we've launched a very exciting new program that I'll talk about that is dedicated to supporting real estate entrepreneurs of color. And that's actually going to be our first real venture into supporting for-profit developers. But since our founding in 1983, we've invested over $160 million in projects to build, expand, and improve homes, childcare centers, and the other types of projects that I talked about before in the tri-state area. We've actually supported, I think, about over 8,000 units of housing, 5,000 public charter school seats, 11 healthcare centers, and about 51 nonprofit facilities to support nonprofits that are providing services to low-income people. So I do have a slide deck, if we could bring that up, please. There we go. So over the past few years, the Leviticus Fund has begun listening very differently to our borrowers and to other community stakeholders in order to address specific challenges faced by Black and Brown real estate developers, specifically when it comes to accessing loan capital. So in response to this, we've launched a new initiative called Empowering Diverse Real Estate Entrepreneurs, and we call that EDRE for short. Our work here is focused on removing barriers to accessing capital that prevents entrepreneurs of color from flourishing in the real estate development industry, but also to increase access to some technical assistance and training, which is really key in helping smaller developers grow their firms. So with the EDRE Fund, we're offering BIPOC-owned for-profit development firms and BIPOC-led nonprofit development organizations the same high level of flexibility and commitment that we're known for amongst our current nonprofit borrowers. So last year, we actually had a roundtable discussion around March 2021. And we had 6 Black developers who provided some invaluable insight on some of the most insurmountable barriers that they faced and often still face in their careers. These developers had various levels of experience. We actually had one gentleman on the roundtable who is an aspiring developer. He was part of a program through the Hudson River Housing Organization to develop, to be developers so that they can be successful. It's a great call. We had about an hour and a half to 2 hours discussion. And unsurprisingly to everyone on the call, a lack of access to various types of resources was really the major theme of our discussion. Particularly, access to educational resources was one of the most discussed barriers. One of our participants mentioned how he struggled at the beginning of his career because of the lack of guidance for how to become a developer and how to successfully complete a project. We had another gentleman that talked about the fact that even when educational resources are available, it can often be difficult for small firms to find the human capital to attend those workshops and trainings and then be able to use them to grow their firms. Lastly, someone mentioned that in New York City, there are a lot of programs for MWBEs, but a lot of the times, many of the attendees tend to be white women. Another issue was access to capital, which we all know is an issue, particularly though when it comes to pre-development lending. And that's because of some of the things that we've heard earlier in the first session, a lack of assets on your balance sheet often is a hindrance for some of these firms. And when they are able to get funding, which usually comes from community development finance institutions like Leviticus, They found that even then, every time they went in for a new loan request, it was like they were being underwritten from a starting point instead of being able to build off a previous underwriting. And the last barrier that I'll mention was access to a good professional network. So many other developers tend to have networks that they can fall back on, learn about new resources from, and take that information and grow their firms. And we've noticed that a lot of the developers of color that we've been talking to have talked about the fact that that lack of a network has hindered their own growth. So back to the EDRI Fund, our research led us to conclude that there are two tranches of developers that are most in need of our targeted capital. First are young emerging developers who may have some exposure to housing or community development sector, but actually lack a lot of the professional expertise needed to be successful. Second were some more experienced developers who may have completed a couple of projects, but despite having adequate business skills and knowledge, they still face plenty of difficulties accessing capital. So our program is still under development, but we are offering pre-development, bridge, and equity loans to BIPOC developers who have reached out at this point. As the program evolves, we intend to introduce a TA aspect that can provide the type of one-on-one support that some of the small and emerging developers can really benefit from. Whether that's help understanding various loan programs and products that might be available to them, or putting together the capital stack for the project to get that moving, or even other TA related to just building capacity and growing their firms. We continue to seek feedback from those that would be eligible to borrow from the fund. We'll be hosting some roundtables throughout the year to bring our program to the people that are going to be benefiting from it, and make sure that we're really filling the gaps in the market, because we know there are plenty of programs out there, particularly in the last couple of years. So many programs dedicated to serving Black and Brown developers have come online, and we don't want to compete, but we want to be able to figure out where there are still gaps and start to fill those gaps. So this slide talks a little bit about some of the information that we would be reviewing during underwriting. It's pretty typical information. Here's a little bit of information about one of our very first EDRI loan. So this program was launched in the summer 2021. And that summer, we closed our first loan to a Black-owned development firm. This is for a healthy food access program or project in Bridgeport, Connecticut. And we do have several other EDRI loans in our pipeline. Unfortunately, we don't have too many in New Jersey. So I'm really hoping that after this discussion, I'll be able to connect with some New Jersey developers that might be eligible to borrow under EDRI, because that's a major part of our region is New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut. Right now, a lot of our lending is in New York just because of the subsidies that New York City provides that allows developers to take on these projects and be able to find the funding to move them forward. But we know that there are opportunities in New Jersey and there are opportunities in Connecticut. So if anyone's looking for some pre-development or bridge funds, you know where to look. That's the end of my presentation.
Kayla, thank you for that. And thank you for also providing information on some financial resources that your company provides. We'll definitely make sure your contact information gets out, and we will definitely follow up with you and find out if there's been some developers that have reached out to you and took an opportunity to see what you also provide.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and congratulations as well. Our last presenter for the session 2 is Janelle Johnson, the Vice President of Business Development and Investments at NJRA. Janelle?
Good afternoon. Thank you, Craig. As he said, my name is Janelle Johnson. I am the Vice President of Business Development and Investments here at the New Jersey Redevelopment Authority. I think I get the best part because I get to explain further information as it relates to our products, our programs, our services. So Venitra, when you can get a chance, if you could put the slideshow up, that would be great. So just so you know, we are the New Jersey Redevelopment Authority, and we like to go off of our slogan, we're there first. We believe in entering cities and communities that lack disinvestment. We oversee 67 NJRA eligible communities, inclusive of South, Central, and North Jersey. We're also big on impact. To date, we've approved $418 million in direct investments. We have leveraged just over $3.8 billion in total investments. We have provided housing for good quality stock of 15,218 units. We have created over 1,500 jobs, and we're just going to keep pushing the needle. You know, I listened very closely to what was being said earlier, and it's beyond being viable. It's all about sustainability. And that is exactly the reason, hence we displayed this webinar for today. So what kind of financing does the New Jersey Redevelopment offer? Overall, we provide up to 3-year terms. Our financing is favorable. We are not a one-size-fits-all. We do look at every deal on a case-by-case basis. Our safe code is mixed use. We love to do that type of financing because it provides quality housing stock in addition to creating jobs and producing local money. But we also provide bond financing. And our 2 most popular pots of funding is our redevelopment investment fund. So perhaps you already own your property and you're looking to redevelop, or you're looking to rehab. The Redevelopment Investment Fund would be a great source to help in your development endeavor. We also have the Urban Site Acquisition Program that helps with acquiring land, acquiring properties. We provide up to $1 million. And my dear friend that I just met, Kayla, perhaps you need a little more. She mentioned they do pre-development and pre-construction as well. So that's where you see collaboration at its best. We can marry the 2 sources, add it to your capital stack, and now that's less equity that you have to inject into your project. As I said, we do provide new construction. We also assist with renovations, purchase of equipment, and we do provide debt financing, working capital. As I said, our underwriting is done on a case-by-case basis. We realize that we serve a different audience. And so we're not going to ask you for 20% down because we realize the impact and the result of how we can improve and spur our economy by improving that dilapidated building that you drive by every day, or by placing something on that piece of land that can improve the enhancement and sustainability of your community. So just to give you an example of some of the great work the New Jersey Redevelopment Authority has done outside of the $25 million that we have injected into small BIPOC businesses these last 2 years. Just recently, there was an open house that took place with Rising Tide Capital. We provided this particular company with $1.5 million in funding. It was a blighted building. It is now completely transformed. We highly encourage you to go take a look at it. And just to add to that, you know, perhaps you have a building that you've owned and you've had it for some time now, or there's a site that you drive by. Contact your municipality, you know, and as they said, it's beyond creating relationships. We have to build and maintain them. So please do reach out to the New Jersey Redevelopment Authority. Overview. We are there first. We enter those cities that most developers don't even choose to drive by, look by. And we understand there's been some roadblocks. We also understand there's been some barriers. And we're here to step in. We heard everything that was said. We take full accountability. It does take 2 hands to clap. So please do contact us. In closing, I'm Janelle Johnson, Vice President of Business Development. And this webinar was created on behalf of our President and CEO, Leslie Anderson, and our COO and interim President and CEO, Daryl Godfrey. We thank you so much for being a part of our panel. We really look forward to speaking to each and every single one of you. In addition to what Kayla said, we go beyond financing. We're going to hold your hand. We're going to provide you with the technical assistance, the next steps, and we're going to take project number 1 and turn it into 2, 3, and 4. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a good day.
Some of you, probably most of you, are wondering, I would love to be able to see this again. And the answer to that is yes. We will be posting this entire webinar on our NJRA YouTube channel at a later date. So you'll be able to revisit all this valuable information. I want to thank our speakers for doing, as always, a phenomenal job of taking time out of their schedule to provide us some insight and some best practices of how they do what they do. Very engaging conversation. I want to say here now, I am completely positive we will do a follow-up to this particular webinar. I want to thank our co-moderators, Mr. Daryl Godfrey and Mr. Philip Woolfolk, for their time today in leading us in session 1. I also want to take this time to thank our entire NJRA staff. We could not do what we do. It is a 100% team effort all the way around to do what we do to provide you these webinars. So thank you, NJRA staff. And I would be remiss if I don't mention that please continue to follow us on our social media platforms and provide us with feedback. We read every one of those and we take those to heart as we do what we do from a reaching out to you standpoint. Also, I want to do a quick little shout out to our marketing team at NJRA. Phenomenal job continuing to make sure that what we do gets out to the public, as well as working collaboratively with our other agencies in New Jersey. So thank you very much for that. I've been informed that we ran a little bit over, but that's okay because the conversation was engaging. We've captured all of the chat room questions and we'll make sure we filter those out to the prospective speakers as well. And I will follow up with you with their contact information as well. So at this point, I want to tell you thank you for staying with us at the end of the day. We look forward to having you participate in our upcoming webinars. This is Oscar Parham at NJRA. I want to tell you thank you for your time today. Take care of you and your community and have a good rest of the afternoon.